All right, we will get started. So welcome to our presentation today on how to run a remote office. Clearly, this is not anything new. People have been doing remote for a long time, but with the coronavirus, this issue has achieved new urgency. So we thought this would be a good time for us to share what we have learned over the years of doing this. And I am joined by our crack office manager, who was integral to the running of our virtual firm. And so just to give you let me say, this presentation is going to go probably about an hour. You're welcome to post questions in the chat and we will try to respond to them. We're going to have some time at the end, hopefully for Q&A. But the two primary things I'm going to talk to you folks today about are, first, the nuts and bolts of how to run a virtual office, the technology that we use, some of the tips and tricks that we have. And then secondly, and I think in some ways more important, are the cultural factors that I think you need to have in place in order to, you need to have a place in order to make this run smoothly. So with that, let's get started. And let's see, we can move to the first slide.
Alrighty.
Okay, so the first thing to remember about running a virtual office is to recognize that in-person is better than virtual in many respects. The benefits of running a virtual office are obvious, right? I mean, we can tick those off. Many people would prefer a commute to their bedroom or their home office than they would, particularly fighting DC traffic. So those things are pretty clear, but there is a price to be paid by having a virtual office. And just as I've noticed over the years, and as I think, all of us probably understand to a certain extent intuitively, and that is that as human beings, we are designed to talk in person. With the technology we're using right now, Zoom, video chat, things are much better, but still you don't get the same level of nonverbal cues. You don't get the same access to people. It's just not as good. You don't get the same organic communication, water cooler kind of communication. And I think just recognizing that is the first step to making sure you have a healthy virtual office space. And I have to say, it took me years to realize this, and just, sort of the story of our firm and how we started virtually is, when I started this firm back in 2009, it was just me and a laptop, and I had an office space. It was a small office space, probably 700 square feet. We had a small conference room. We had a very small office in the back. And as the firm grew and I hired people, as of necessity, we could all be in the office at the same time. And, being in DC, there's an obvious benefit to being able to work virtually because you get access to talent that you wouldn't otherwise get. And you save commute time, which in this area is huge. So we started to grow virtually, not by plan, but just sort of by happenstance. And over the years, we had the tools in place, and we're going to be getting to some of those in a minute. And they've gotten a lot better than when I started this. But we were able to run it virtually. But what I realized is that without tending to it, the firm culture can break down. And that's not because anybody's doing anything wrong. It's just by human nature. If we don't have contact with each other, we start to lose that connection. So recognizing that in person, that's how we were designed as human beings to communicate, is better, and that you need to correct for that. And so moving to the next slide, our donut here. We were also not designed to eat donuts, but they're darn good, and we can eat them, and it works out okay as long as you can't live off of donuts, right? As long as you recognize that you need to exercise, that you need to eat them in moderation. So as human beings, we're amazingly flexible, and we can do things that our bodies were not designed to do, as we were developed however many millions of years ago, out on the plains. We can compensate for modern conveniences and things that we like. Okay, so here's the important, but I think easy part. Let's talk briefly about the technology. I think most people probably are on this call are doing some version of this. So, but let me just show you some of the tools that we use.
Yeah. Okay. And whoop. Do you want me to hop in here?
Hop in and talk about what we use.
All right. Well, just to start with basic email, we use G Suite. We've definitely gotten some like, should we switch to Outlook, kind of back and forth. But G Suite so far has worked pretty well for us, especially in terms of having the integration, and like you can actually have, like, for example, one of our other management softwares we use, Practice Panther, has a Gmail integration where you can save the emails directly to Gmail, and Gmail has a lot of integrations like that. So because of that, I like Gmail. That's mainly what we use. For chat, for just our office-to-office communication for all of our employees, we use Slack. I don't know what we would do without Slack, because Slack is just the quickest and fastest way to reach anybody. It's faster than texting somebody sometimes, because it's just an instant messenger, but at the same time, you can organize into groups based on teams and things like that. So it's really a valuable resource for us. Calendly is, I'm sorry?
Integrates with a lot of these other programs.
It does, yes. So it integrates with Asana for one. It integrates with Google Documents. So if somebody shares a Google document with you, it can pop right up. It integrates with Google Calendar. So it'll show like an icon next to your name if you're in a meeting. It does quite a few integrations like that, which are great. Calendly is what we use to schedule all of our consultations. Calendly also has quite a few integrations, but most importantly, it has a Zapier integration. So that kind of just opens up a whole new realm of possibilities of what you can do with Calendly. But really, it's such an easy software because it drops your appointments right onto Google Calendar, and you don't even have to think about it. Like, you just send somebody that link and it drops right on your calendar. Toki is something new to us. We were using RingCentral. We recently switched to Toki. Toki is the main sell for us was its direct integration with Infusionsoft. It does make calls through the Wi-Fi. So you can just download an app on your cell phone or open a Chrome extension and make calls directly through it so that you're not calling clients on your personal number, which is a bad idea in my opinion. And also, because of its direct integration with Infusionsoft, it creates a timestamp and a call log in every single contact. So you can actually go back and see, oh, well, I reached out to them at 5 p.m. And I've already had this be useful to me, where a client says, oh, well, you never called me. And I can say, well, actually, I can see that this agent went in and called you at this time. Can you confirm this is the correct number? And it's definitely helped us just with follow-up in that way. Let me know if I'm going too fast with this. I know I'm kind of zooming.
Also, we should have put out, we should have, another bullet we could have put up here. Just tell folks what Zapier is.
Yes. Zapier is, I guess the best way to explain it is it's kind of like something that works as like a connectivity between applications. So what it does is, like, for example, if I used it on Calendly, I could use it to connect Calendly and Infusionsoft. So if a new tag is created, therefore an event is created, or vice versa. It connects two softwares to be able to just make everything work together in the system and talk to each other, which is really, really invaluable, especially if you're trying to, especially with like a CRM like Infusionsoft that's so in depth already. If you're trying to keep everything in one place, Zapier is definitely invaluable for that. But that was my next point, is Infusionsoft. Infusionsoft is our CRM. It has been our CRM for a long time, and it's just a huge software that does a lot. So, I mean, the great thing about Infusionsoft is the community. There's so many Infusionsoft certified people that you can reach out to for help or to build into your system exactly what you need. So even though it's this dense, intense system, it really can do whatever you need it to do. It's just a matter of making sure that all the pieces are in the right spots with that.
Let me just add to that. So VoIP just stands for Voice over Internet Protocol,
Mm-hmm.
Internet phone, and CRM is Client Relationship Management Tool.
Yes.
in Infusionsoft, this is not one, I think Angela would agree, that you need for a remote office. You know,
Absolutely.
we use it. Salesforce is another big one. There are a lot of competing programs
For sure.
in this marketplace that can be better for, for smaller firms and for smaller organizations. I like Infusionsoft. It's sort of the devil we know. And anybody who wants to follow up with me or Angela offline would be happy to talk about it. It's a great software. I think if I were to start over, particularly as a smaller firm, I would not have used it because it is very complex. So it is a tool that we use. It's a very good one. And as with any of these, the tool itself doesn't matter. So, pick one, pick, G Suite, pick Outlook, pick Slack or Google Hangouts, whatever it is that you want to use. It doesn't matter if you use Calendly or one of the competing, software companies or Toki or RingCentral or Grasshopper. I think there are just a bunch of them in the market. The important thing is just to pick one in these categories. I think it's important to have a chat function. I think email, right? Everybody's got those. But you can spin, and I've done this. I mean, you can get into shiny. I know Angel and I have been around this bush too. You can get into shiny object syndrome where, oh, this is the next great software. This is going to take care of all of our problems. And there's no software silver bullet. Just pick one and learn how to use it and stick with it. Slack is great for us. Other chat programs can work fine for you. And in terms of budgeting, which is something we don't have a specific slide on, but a lot of these are very inexpensive. Obviously, email is inexpensive. Slack is very inexpensive. Probably the priciest thing we have up here is Infusionsoft, which again, you don't need to run a virtual office place, and you can get, Google CRMs, and you'll get, half a dozen or more. You can get some that are very inexpensive. So, for those folks who, because of coronavirus, have sort of had to rip the Band-Aid off and go virtual, I think is what you'll find is it's at least in tool wise, it's easier than you think. And most people, even if we're in offices now, we're using these tools anyway. We're using the chat functions. We're not, we're living digitally anywhere. So some of the firms that I have seen that again have had more of a brick and mortar presence who, now have gone completely virtual. I think they're finding it surprisingly, at least technologically, a lot easier. And the budget for it, you can go crazy, but you can do this in a very inexpensive way.
For sure. Yeah, because even if, like, just as an example, and I'm glad you brought that up, Tom, because Calendly, I believe, has a free or almost free version, just as an example. And even if not Calendly, there are software scheduling platforms that are free. And Infusionsoft, even just as an example, has Keep and entry-level softwares that are like $50, less than $100 a month. That, granted, they're small. They're for like 1,000 contacts or less. But if that's what you need, I even know some people who don't even do a CRM at all and just use MailChimp, which is free, to just get to have their client database somewhere to send out emails. And that's absolutely fine too. So there's definitely not just one way to do this. Is just the way we do it. But I think it's definitely important to have your systems and know where they live, even if you don't have a software for it, knowing, okay, well, when we make phone calls, this is how we do it. We use this VoIP, or we're using this particular phone app, like, just as long as it lives somewhere and everybody knows that this is what you do when you make a phone call.
Very good.
But moving on, for practice management software, it seems like there's a lot of debate about this online. Lots of people like Clio, don't like Clio, Practice Panther. Before, we were actually using Basecamp, which is not even specific to practice management. Lexicato was around for a while. I think it's part of Clio now. But one we've settled on is Practice Panther. I actually really like Practice Panther, and from what I've seen with other people online, it's the most user-friendly. It's pretty easy to navigate as far as these go. But basically that's where we log all of our time. It's where sometimes we store documents there, but mainly we use it for time management and invoicing for our clients. And I think for that, it does a pretty good job. And of course, like we've been saying, like, there's lots of different legal practice managers out there, and you can find opinions about every single one on the internet. So it's just a matter of finding what works for you.
And this, just to jump here real quick, Angela, this is another one. I mean, this is obviously, and I think we have some non-attorneys on the call.
Yeah.
You know, these are legal specific for law firms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are other industry specific ones. Again, depending on what if you're a smaller firm, or like you said, like you don't need one of these practice management programs. We found it very helpful. You know, this is where the guts of our legal work gets done. So, but again, it's a matter, as you said, Angela, picking what tool you want to use and making a practice of using it. Because within Practice Panther, you know, there are chat functions within Practice Panther. We could do something. You could live within Practice Panther. You could live within Clio. But I think what you'll find with any of these out-of-box programs like Practice Panther, you know, it's sort of like an all-in-one printer. They do everything pretty well, but they don't do one thing really great. So for instance, like, you know, so we use Slack for our chat program. We don't use the one that's in Practice Panther. We could, that would just be a decision for us. So I think, again, don't spin your wheels on what's the best one to use, because there probably isn't a best one to use. Pick one and learn to use it. I mean, a story that I like to tell within the office, like, I worked with an attorney one time. I was co-counsel with him, and he wrote one of the best briefs, I mean, legal briefs I've ever seen, just in terms of the nature of the writing and the density of his research. It was just really brilliant. And the dude pounded it out, tapping it out, one finger on a keyboard. I mean, two fingers, you know, like he didn't know how to type. You know, would it have been better for him to like sit down and learn how to type at some point? Yes. But he could type with two fingers. He could type fast. Like, he got it done. So pick the tool that will work for you, and, you know, that works best, and just live with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's moving on to Asana. And we use that for task management. No, I mean, tying back into your earlier point, we could use the task lists on Practice Panther or the reminders on Infusionsoft, but we just found that using a separate task management software, and I found that this works really well for me. And I mean, I'm pretty biased. I think Asana is the best product out there, because there's also Monday.com and some other products, but Asana has a free version that's really still very functional, I think. But their paid version has a lot of great features. They also have the Asana Academy, which is completely free. So you can learn how to use Asana and become Asana certified or an Asana ambassador, all completely free. So I think Asana, personally, as someone who's incredibly scatterbrained and working on so many things at once, if somebody sends me something on Slack, I immediately put a task in Asana, because otherwise I will forget. And if Asana is there, another great thing it does is you can pull reports at the end of the month. You can look at the end of the day and say, okay, how many tasks did I hit complete today? And how many due dates are due in the next week? How many in the next month? So it really allows you to stay organized on both like a micro and macro level. And I think that that's incredibly important to do, whether you're using a software or even if you're just using like a notepad and writing down your task list. I think it's so, so important to do that, especially when you're working from home, because it's so easy to just be like, oh, well, I'll just go change over the laundry. Oh, what was I working on? And just staying organized, I think, is a huge part of it. But Trainual is probably my personal favorite on this list, because I think before our policies and procedures, we were having them live kind of in Google Drive. And for a lot of people that works very well, and more power to them. But the problem for me with Google Drive is I didn't know when I send it out to everyone, if they actually read it. And I mean, if you're busy, whatever, I'm not saying that people are liars, but things get away from you. And Trainual is really, really great, because you can sort by modules. You can sort the modules by role. So when I add a new employee, all I have to do is assign that role, and they automatically get all of the policies and procedures they need for their position. You can also add quizzes just to reinforce knowledge about each of the topics. And you can also require them to hit mark complete. That is the hugest thing, because recently, and I'm tying it, we're going to get to this with training, but it allowed me to train an employee and go in and pull their report and see, okay, well, when did they hit complete for all of these topics? Is this all completed? So I can verify that they did in fact read it. rather than, oh, I just send it out into the void and I hope that that they've read the information. So I think that that's huge. And whatever software you use, I think Trainual is probably one of the best out there. Just finding some way to verify that they have learned to digest that information, even if it's just a conversation, and sitting down and saying, okay, well, this policy I just sent you, did you have any questions about A, B, and C? And finding some way to verify that information and verify that that's being done and being able to spot check that in some way, I think is important.
Yeah, and this is another point about Trainual, and this is, we could do a whole separate webinar on this. There's been a lot written about it, as there should be, but it I think becomes really key for really key for a virtual practice, and that is having your policies and procedures in place. And that's healthy for any firm. And there's a great, any business anywhere, there's a great book. It's a classic for those who haven't read it, by Michael Gerber. It's called E-Myth, and it's all about policies and practices and procedures. And it sounds deceptively easy. You need to have a way to how things work. It is, as Angela will attest to, really hard in practice to make sure that they are being followed. And when you're in an office together, that is one of the things that, again, it's never easy anywhere. But if you're in an office, you can walk by somebody's office. Are they there? Or are they there or are they not there? Are they doing the call? You're listening to it. Are they doing the call that you want them the way you want them to, or not? Are they, this is not a legal seminar, but one of the things you need to watch out for, particularly for virtual offices, is timekeeping. A lot of people are paid hourly or supposed to be paid hourly. How are you going to make sure that they're clocking in and, clocking some version of clocking in and clocking out? Trainual does not do timekeeping, but at least you have a policy and a procedure where you can tell people, like, okay, this is when you take lunch or whatever it may be. And again, Trainual is a great tool. But again, just like any others, the tool is not going to solve the problem for you.
How you use it.
Yeah, and let me back up and say, we use Practice Panther for all of our timekeepers, whether they are legal practitioners or not.
For sure.
But another good tool that's not up here, but we have used in the past is, and there are a bunch of them. It's called Toggl, Toggl. So don't put the E on. Again, I'm pretty sure it has a free version too, but it's a great.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to to track time for those people who are supposed to be working hourly. You can track their time and pay them appropriately, and not find yourself in hot water for that. So anyway, that's my 2 cents about policies and procedures.
Yeah, and I mean, moving on to DocuSign. There are lots of other softwares now. I think there's Adobe Sign is another one that integrates with Adobe Pro. But I think especially if you have a business, even if it's not a law firm, but something that requires a signature, that having a DocuSign account or something like it is incredibly, it's necessary for what you need to do. Because I mean, especially now, with like current regulations going around, and it might not be an option for the client to come into the office and sign the document. Just making sure that something like DocuSign, and I'm not super familiar with how Adobe Sign works and some of those others, but I think it's pretty similar in that you just literally click, type your name, and hit a check box. It's super, super easy. We've even had some people who were more technologically challenged. We were able to walk them through it on the phone, no problem. So that's been also, I mean, even not in times like this, where if somebody just needs a quick turnaround, like they need something filed this week or something crazy like that, having to be able to get that retainer signed to that day can make a huge difference in their case in terms of us getting to start work right away.
Absolutely. And just on that point too, and a larger point, but about DocuSign in particular, there was a great book, The Client-Centered Law Firm, that was written by the Jack Newton, who founded Clio. But he talks about, making, so this is not necessarily about virtual law firm, but that one of the advantages of these programs is making the experience for your client as frictionless as possible. And so this is just one example. If you can send somebody a DocuSign and they can sign it, while they're in their slippers drinking their coffee, that's a much quicker experience, obviously, than having them come into your office and sign the document, understanding that, particularly for law practice, there are some documents, not for our practice in particular, but where there has to be in-person signing, but that's, few and far between. So anything that you can use like that, again, helps with a virtual office, but in any kind of client service oriented business that will make it more seamless, that's, you are better positioned to succeed, because as we all know, we are getting more used to frictionless experiences, whether it's current circumstances notwithstanding, being able to order your grocery store, your groceries on your phone, being able to do anything on your phone with a click. And I think that's what we strive to provide to our clients too. And DocuSign is just one example of a tool that we use for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jumping ahead, I think a lot of people on this call with what we're using right now, Zoom for video meetings has just been, it's a necessity, I think, for us, because it's not even just the set meetings that we have during the week, which we'll get to, which are team specific or just the whole firm, which we use Zoom for. It's even just for if we need to meet with somebody about someone, it's the equivalent for us, I think, of stepping into someone's office and saying, hey, can I just talk to you real quick? Just send them a Zoom link. And again, Zoom is free. It does cost to get a pro membership, but with the free membership, you can do free meetings for up to 45 minutes, which nobody super wants to be in a meeting more than 45 minutes anyway. So I think it's a great software. And again, that's tying back to, you don't have to get the biggest, shiniest, fanciest thing. It's just whatever works for you. And again, that's going to make potentially your client meetings more seamless if they can do them from home using something like Zoom. Is definitely a great service.
And just an example of integration, like with Slack, you can do /Zoom,
and it creates a meeting automatically, which is awesome.
Meeting automatically. So it is, as you said, Angela, that can be the equivalent of, hey, can I swing by your office?
Yeah, and we've definitely used it for that. And I think that tying into what we were saying earlier about just maintaining firm culture, maintaining that communication, I think sometimes having that face-to-face meeting is really crucial with doing that. But moving on to Dropbox is another just necessity for us. And I know some people also use Box is another one that's very similar. But really most of our files are virtual. So even if somebody sends us physical files or something like that, or brings them by our office, we scan them in and we put them on Dropbox. So that way our attorneys aren't having to wait to get the documents in the mail or drop by the office to pick them up. They can really just pull up the file and start work immediately. And that's just, it's invaluable with just researching, drafting documents. It's definitely a huge part of what we do is on Dropbox for sure. But,
and for scanning, I should just say, obviously there are a bunch of scanners. We use ScanSnap. I think they're around $500. You can get them on Amazon. Unless you have to scan a bunch of documents, they work just fine.
Yeah. I would say if you have 100 or less, which we try to, at least for an initial submission from clients, try to keep them under 100 pages, just the most important stuff, so we could get started right away. ScanSnap's great for that. You can just stick 100 documents in it and it'll just scan on both sides really, really quick. Now, Meeting Owl is actually a new tool we've been using, and these are all hyperlinks. So when I send out the links to everyone who's here, you'll be able to click on these and look them up. But it's a speaker and also a microphone and also a 360 camera that you literally just sit in the middle of your table. It just plugs right in, USB, plugs into the wall, and it auto detects who's speaking and will zone in on them. And it hooks right up with Zoom, it hooks right up with Skype, any clients like that. So if you're actually a combination, which we often have been in the past, between in-office and virtual, it kind of gives that sense of being there, I think, a little bit more than having a laptop and kind of shifting it around the room to show everybody, which was kind of our old system.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I wish I could have brought it up here. I could have shown people, but it's smallish. My hands are, but it's not maybe a foot high. It's pretty light. I mean, we even, just because we, you know, we do have a brick and mortar office. It's a smaller one, and we don't use it. I mean, we use it for group meetings and things like that. But that's where we would have, you know, lunches, and, you know, we would use the owl. But I even used it with my family, you know, so I have 4 kids, and, you know, we're always usually huddled around the phone talking to grandma or whatever. And, you know, last night I hooked up the owl. You know, you just plug it into your computer, and then, you know, all the kids are around the table, and then they're talking, and the owl, without moving the owl, it just switches to where they are. It's really, it's a really great piece of technology.
Yeah, it's super cool. And then you don't even really have to install it. I remember I had to install an app for the initial setup, kind of like you do with like Amazon Alexa or one of those. But once that's set up, then all you have to do is just plug it in and go, which is super, super easy. Yeah, but these were some other things. I didn't know if you want to talk about this, Tom, just some ways to find remote employees. These are ones that we've used.
Yeah.
Get Staffed Up, we actually used to find both of our intake specialists, and they're both rock stars. They are amazing. They have a really, really in-depth interview process, and they kind of handhold you every step of the way. Like even to the final interview, they just sit on ready to ask any questions that are needed, or just jump in with any additional info. They just do a really, really great job, I think,
And
just providing quality candidates.
Let me just jump in and say, we don't get, like, we're not paid promoters.
Oh, no, we're not getting paid for any of this.
But these are just the things that we use, and that we have found helpful. So just so you know, it's we're not, for better or worse, we're not getting paid by Get Staffed Up.
Yeah, no, none of these, not Zoom, not Trainual, none of them. These are just ones we found personally work for us, and if they work for you too, that's awesome. Get Leverage. We've kind of worked with them on and off over the years, is because they do kind of a little bit of everything, which is really nice, especially in times like now where you might just need a part-time employee to do a project. Get Leverage is definitely good for that.
And let me just back up and so say, when for a program like Get Staffed Up, you know, these are virtual. These folks are all over the world for Get Staffed Up. And so this is one of the benefits too of having a virtual office, and have your, not only, you know, working, you know, your people who are producing your products, whatever it's legal or otherwise, but the whole operation be virtual. Because, you know, even before the coronavirus hit, you know, we were, I mean, almost, you know, people could come into our office and meet us if they wanted to, but almost all of our initial consultations, everything was either on the phone or with Zoom. I mean, it was just rare that people wanted to come into the office. So that meant that when we, you know, for a service like Get Staffed Up, like, that was great for us. So we could hire, you know, for some of our legal assistants, you know, like again, for our intake specialists, like, because we could have access to people, like one of ours is in Mexico, one of them is in the Philippines, like, you know, they're all over the world. And if you've got a completely virtual setup, then you can take advantage of things like this. Whereas if your setup requires that people come into your office, you know, you can still use a service like Get Staffed Up for like some of your back office help, but you're going to need, you know, you're not going to be able to use them for, like, for intake services. So it's just another advantage of, if you are virtual, of having access to talent really worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a note on that, in training, and we'll get to this, but in training these people, you almost kind of realize where your holes are. And it's almost kind of an inadvertent check system for yourself in terms of, okay, what are the things I can and can't do digitally, and where are the spots where we need to step in and explain things. And that's what I found when we hired these 2 people from Get Staffed Up. I realized, going through our policies and procedures, okay, well, this is one that's going to have to be different for them, or this is a meeting they can't attend. And it helps you to even just kind of revamp your systems as you're trying to be more remote, once you're training these remote employees and realizing, okay, what adjustments need to be made for these employees to be fully remote and still be successful in their positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Upwork is another one, just to move on. They're really specific, I would say, mostly to tech things. Like you can find a lot of people who code, a lot of web developers on Upwork, mainly for projects like that. But these people, again, like Get Staffed Up, are all over the world. You can look at reviews, you can look at past projects they've done. You can ask them to pretty much, like they're applying on Indeed, to submit like a resume, a cover letter, before you take them on for the position. And we've gotten a lot of really talented workers through Get Staffed Up, even just for projects like ebooks and just for a specific web page or web design project. We've found some really good workers on Upwork, I think.
And let me add for that. So they're just, and I would say Get Leverage and Upwork are different ways. They're not exclusive, but ways to approach a problem or ways to approach an issue. Like Get Leverage, their model is rather than piece together the kind of remote employees that you need to do, let's say a technical project. They will, Angela, I don't know, on my slide now it's kind of blocked off. Do you see? Looks kind of weird on mine. Can you see it? There we go. Never mind. So Get Leverage, their model, and we've used them in the past with good results. But you pay a monthly. At least I think they've changed their service model now. But the way it used to work is you'd pay a monthly fee. You would have one point of contact, and then if whatever you wanted done, you would send it to them, and then they would tap into their worldwide network of remote employees. So, for instance, if you're like, I want to do a podcast. Rather than go out and find somebody to advise you on the equipment, to do the back, to do the editing, to, help you design it, they would pull together the team for you to do it, soup to nuts, get the whole thing done. There's a little bit of a premium that you pay for that convenience, but it is a convenience. And if you need, and they have specialists too. So if you need, for instance, like Infusionsoft, which can be somewhat complicated, you could post there and say, I want an autoresponder for my email campaign and I use Infusionsoft. And they'd be like, great, we're going to, here's somebody we got that does email programs. Here's somebody we got that writes copy for the emails. And here's our Infusionsoft expert. Now, after your monthly subscription, you get a certain number of hours and you pay above that. So, you don't just get all these people for one flat rate necessarily, but it is really, if you don't want to go out there and fish around and be responsible for the buyer's beware for finding employees, it's a great service. Upwork is just a different side of that. Upwork is a platform where you go and you post. It's free to use it for employers. You go and you post any job that you want done, and people will respond to your ad. And as Angela said, if they've been on the platform for any amount of time, they'll have reviews, and you can review their work. You can set your prices. You can pay hourly. You can set a flat rate. And the other great thing about Upwork is they handle the payment. So you give them your credit card. They charge. Let's say you set a flat rate of $500, and they charge your card, and they essentially put that in an escrow. So it sits there, but that doesn't get paid to the contractor until you get the work product that you want. So that prevents, obviously from, you're hiring somebody, no telling where, if you're handing them $500, they could simply disappear on you. That prevents that from happening. And then for the contractor, they have peace of mind knowing that the money is there and that they're not going to get ripped off. We've had great luck with Upwork, and you can really, they're great for tech stuff, but we found copywriters, we found all kinds of non-tech people on Upwork. There is a bit of buyer beware. I've only gotten burned once or twice. And by burned, I mean, I just got a product that was not one. I just had to go and find somebody else, but it's only happened once or twice. Really, can't recommend it highly enough. Like for instance, like when we were doing some of our own videos, this was a number of years ago, but I wanted I didn't even know what to call them. Like the intro at the open and the exit, the intro and the the outro of the video. I didn't even know what they were called. And I went on Upwork and I'm like, I am looking for these things that go on the end of the video and the beginning of the video. And somebody was like, oh, what you want is called a bumper. Well, we do bumpers, and then a bunch of other people responded, and I hired somebody to do the bumpers for our video. We have on our website what's called a damages calculator, where people can come, we do employment law, and people can come, and they can get a sense based on a number of factors what their case is worth. Well, I hired somebody on Upwork to do that for me. I knew the factors, like I could feed that to them, but like, I mean, I'm not complete Luddite. Like I have some technical capabilities, but I'm really like, I'm just the basics on spreadsheets. And I was able to, I think I got that thing done for like $500. And I just said, here are the cells I want. And there was a lot of back and forth, so it was different than hiring somebody, who was just going to come in and handle the whole thing for you. I had to have a lot of back and forth with him, but he got it done. And, if I had hired somebody that just had done the whole thing for me, it would have cost thousands of dollars. And this guy did it for 500. So it's a really great service for almost anything. But if you want something tech done, again, it's free to post, and you get all the applications, and you can hire somebody, and if it works, great. And it's really not terribly, because you're setting the price, it's not terribly expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know more about the hire and esquire, law clerk, legal, but most of those are, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's you post I believe on a law clerk, it's you actually post like a project. You say, I need help writing a demand letter, I need help writing a motion, and you set your flat rate, or you set your hourly rate, and then you look at applications very similar to Upwork, and you choose your person to do that project. I believe Hire and Esquire is very similar in that regard. So that's very great. And again, that's legal specific, but if you just have a project or something and everybody's swamped, to have that option to put out there to make sure that the work is still getting done is definitely invaluable in the legal field, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is moving on to just onboarding. And this is based a lot on kind of my experience with training some of the employees we've had come on completely remote. The main thing I've found is that you need to establish immediately who is in charge, who is their point person. So from day one, establishing this is your supervisor. You come to this person with your questions, with any clarifications, need anything about the training material, you're going to this person, because otherwise they're going to be posting in general on Slack, hey, where's this? And they don't know who to ask. So establishing that, I think, is the most important thing to do. Whatever software you're using, make sure that they know from day one who their point person is for questions. Also just setting a schedule. And I mean, some of this is you need to do, period, whether you're training remote or you're training in person. But I think especially when you're training remote, saying, this is what I expect you to get done your first day, and these are what we're expecting you to do your first week. And having a way, whether it's through technology or again, just through a conversation, and verifying that with them of what has gotten done at the end of those days. Okay, it's the end of your first day. What have you learned? What did you get done? Making sure that you have those steps along the way, making sure that they're on track for their training is a huge part. And again, that's going into the next part. Is it getting done? Having ways, like I said, trainual, but again, having a way to go through and make sure that they're learning the information they need to complete their job, and that they're creating the accounts they need, and that they know where the letterhead is, and that they just have the basic info they need to complete their job is absolutely vital. And do you have anything to add to that, Tom?
No, except that just to say that this can be done. Angela's done Angela's done a great job with this, and there are I mean, any number of employees that we have right now that we will never actually physically meet. Like they're in another country, and they come in where Angela gets them integrated into our system. They're up and running and able to get work done for us. And so I think Angela has done a great job with it, using Trainual and things like that. But just shows you that like there are a lot of things that happen organically when you are in an in-person office that people just sort of pick up when they're walking down the hall, when they're new. How do I do this? How to do that? And if you have an explicit onboarding training program, when you're trying to do it remote, you find out real quick, all the things that you're relying on to happen organically in the office. And if you have that system, we have people, that again, work for us from other countries who we will never actually physically meet, and they integrate just fine into our system, and are up and working in just, a matter of days.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, just moving on, these again are just some basic pointers. But establishing that communication for questions, like right now with our intake specialist, the person who is their point person that we've established is actually John, who's our client services manager. But we have kept in mind that he does our consultations. He has other work during the day. So we have kind of a system of, okay, well, if John's in a meeting, you can ask Angela, you can go to her for questions, and having that hierarchy so that they always know that who they can come to for questions. And even today with our second intake specialist, so she's only been on the phones now for, well, I guess today's her second day. She knows that she can ask me, but she also knows she can ask the other intake specialist who's been on the phone a little longer than her, and we'll have some information on that. And we have recordings for them to listen to. We just have like all of this information that even if they can't find a person to answer their question, they can refer to the training, they can refer to our policies and procedures and see if they can find the answer for themselves. So just making sure that you have kind of that set system of where you can look for an answer to your questions. The next thing I would say is just be flexible, because there's going to be, okay, well, can you hop on a call in 15 minutes? Like things are not going to go according to plan. You're the first time you do this, just at all. And just establishing that off the bat and trying to make yourself available and saying, okay, well, I know this person's first day is today. I might need to shift some things around to hop on a call to answer some things for her. That's definitely going to be important. And I think that something like Zoom or something like a VIOP, it's having a way to contact them that's consistent, whatever that is going to be so important as you're onboarding somebody, so that they don't feel like you're hundreds of miles away and they can't contact you if they have any issues with their work. So just feeling almost like they're in office, like they can come to you and ask questions and they're not going to have to wait, is super important. And the other thing is, again, circling back to just connecting with the team, bringing them in to your workplace culture, making sure they feel like a part of the team. We do virtual meetings, and we'll get to this in a little more detail, but we do virtual meetings several times during the week with the full firm. So even though we have these employees from Mexico and the Philippines, they're still like part of the team, and everybody knows their name and who they are and what they look like, because we have those meetings, and even just meetings where we go over our positive focus for the week, not even necessarily a work-related thing, but just making sure that everybody knows each other and we can support each other, even not in specific work-related ways, just that we are all part of the work culture. I don't know if you had anything to add.
No, I mean, that's great. Very comprehensive.
Yeah. All right. It's not the technology, but how you use it. And I mean, this is something we've kind of been saying, but not saying this whole time, because you can go buy Trainual, but if you don't organize your info in it and assign it correctly and follow up, then it's just another tool that you can kind of throw out there.
Yeah.
And communication tools for planning, we are so guilty of this. I'm so guilty of this, where I'm like, oh, hey, just do this on Slack and assume, oh, it'll just get done. But it's just not a good idea. Whether you use something like Asana or use something like a physical notepad to write things down, like having a better system for planning than just sending an email or sending a Slack is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, again, I think would be true if you were in a physical office or not. I've been bad about this for years, and let me just skip to here too. There's a podcast by Nick Sonnenberg, who's the founder of Get Leverage. And he talks about this a lot. And when I heard it, I heard him talk about it, it was like a light bulb going off. I wish I could have found the episode to link to it, but there's one podcast where he talks about Asana. There's another earlier on, which it's up on his site, but I couldn't find it when I was just scrolling through earlier, where he talks about, having a specific plan or theory about how you're going to use these various tools. And one of them, which is elemental, but it's profound, don't use communication tools for planning purposes. And Angela knows, like, I was bad about, this is one of the downsides of this technology. Slack makes it so easy for you to say, hey, here's this great idea, and you throw it out in whatever channel that you are in, and and then you expect that it's going to get done. And even if you've got people who are diligent, well, first of all, it interrupts everybody, right? I mean, they're working along in their day and this pops up, and, and it's an important thing that they're supposed to remember. And there are ways that you can use Slack. And let me say, for all of these programs, all of them, a lot of them have very good training. It's worth it to figure out how to use them. Slack, for instance, you can star conversations so you can find them later. You can pin them so they'll stay part. There are all different ways you can do this. But the point being is that Slack is a chat function, and so chat functions work. Eventually they get buried. So they've got this important idea that gets buried. And he talked about, and this is something that we've adopted, is use Slack for communicating, not for planning. So, and this is what I used to be bad at, and I adopted it after I heard this podcast. Still not perfect at it, but working on it. Like with Asana, whatever management tool you're using, like if you've got a team meeting, let's say it's, your sales team or your management team or your legal team, whatever it is, and you've got an idea that, you want to discuss with that team, put it on the meeting agenda, for that meeting rather than on Slack, because then it's at a place where it is a planning tool. You are having a communication about planning. It should be within that tool, so then that you can later follow up with it. People can, so add to that meeting agenda rather than throwing out something out on Slack that's just going to get buried. So he talks about, again, this is very elegantly simple, but harder to do in practice. And you don't have to adopt it this way, but this is how he uses it, and something that we generally do within the firm. Emails for external communication, right? You're talking to vendors, you're talking to clients, you use email. We don't generally use email for communication within the firm. Use Slack for internal communication when it's communication. Hey, there's birthday cake in the office if you have an office, or hey, somebody, the Penske file, does anybody know where that is? And you can look, it's not that doctrinaire. With Slack, you can set up specific rooms, and you can sort of use Slack and, or a tool like that for some planning obligations, but generally using Slack just to talk to people. For us also, it's like our electronic water cooler. We have a general channel where people can post generally whatever they want. We have a separate channel for politics. We now set up a separate channel for coronavirus. And in general, people can post and they're encouraged to, pictures of their cats, pictures of that's not just firm business. Like this is literally the firm, the firm water cooler, because in the past, there used to be a literal water cooler, right? Where you'd come and you'd hang out and you'd hear bits and pieces of what was going on. That's where you'd make those social connections. So that's what you use Slack for, but don't use it as a planning tool. Use Asana or something else. It's a difficult habit to break, but that is, I think, one of the biggest lessons for us is it's not the technology necessarily, by having a theory and a plan for how to use it.
For sure. Yeah. But this ties into, I guess, moving along, because we're running a little low on time, working at Team Cohesion in the remote meetings. So just what we do in terms of remote meetings. We have team specific meetings. And again, these are usually for us because we were kind of half remote. Now we're fully remote. They were a combination of Zoom and in office using the meeting owl to kind of Zoom everybody in. But we have team specific meetings typically between the client services team, the legal team, and the management team. And those are our main team meetings, and those are all on different days of the week. Our Tuesday lunch meeting is the entire firm. So everybody comes in and shares their positive focus for the week. So that isn't necessarily a work specific thing, but that's just another thing for opportunity for us to kind of celebrate each other's accomplishments and engage in firm culture and just kind of enhance just our team building. We're all part of the same team. We all want to support each other, whether it's just in a work situation, but also just as people. We're all working towards the same goal, and we want to be there for each other. And our Wednesday through Friday meetings are quick stand-up meetings. And what that means is that it's quick. It's like 10, 15 minutes, and we've kind of got it down to a science now. If we just zoom through everybody, I have a workflow on Slack that automatically posts our list of employees in alphabetical order. And then we just zoom down that list. Everybody knows where they are in the list and when they're coming up. And they just go through a positive focus from the day before, work related, usually a project you finished, something like that, and 3 things that they're working on that day, and if they need any help with those things, which is a really important part too, because especially with the legal team, if you're swamped that day, if you've just been handed a bunch of new assignments and you say, oh, well, actually, you know, I really do need help with this particular project, everyone's on the call. So another paralegal or someone can jump in and say, yeah, I can help you with that today. So it's just a great opportunity for team building.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is, you know, we are running a little short on time, so I will respect the hour and we'll try to go over it. But this is probably one of the more important parts of running a remote team. The tech issues, all of the nuts and bolts, you know, there are certainly, you know, bumps and things to figure out, but they're obvious, right? You got to figure out how to talk to people. There are plenty of people selling these tools, and so it's an obvious part of the conversation. What is less obvious, and what I had to learn the hard way, is that you have to work to maintain firm culture. You know, when I started the firm, again, because I had a small office, and because one of the reasons I started the firm is I had 4 children, you know, well, some version of 4 children. They came along the way, but I wanted to be able to spend time with my family. You know, just, I think with a lot of us that do kind of white collar type work, as long as I had a laptop and access to a Wi-Fi, I could do most of my work from anywhere. And that's how I wanted to work. And I was happy to have the folks worked in the firm have that same, you know, that same privilege to be able to do that. And of course, there was a benefit to me too, because I got access to people that I wouldn't ordinarily get access to. We didn't have commuting time and all that. However, and it took me a long time to learn this, if you don't have these meetings, if you don't have these set touch points, you start to lose some of the culture of whatever your organization is. People start to think of themselves, whether it's intentionally or not, as independent contractors, even if they're not independent contractors, and they develop their own work habits and their ways of doing things. And all of a sudden, everybody's running in different directions. And yes, you may be doing the same work, but there's no real firm cohesion. I realized, you know, it took me years to figure out why, but I knew I had a problem one time when I was talking to one of my attorneys who's no longer with the firm. But, you know, I said, you know, hey, we want to do, I forget what changes we want to make, but she's like, you know, can't you just send me cases and I'll just do my thing? And I was like, okay, this is, I mean, you know, she'd become to think of it as like, this was just a clearinghouse. We were just, you know, passing out cases to these attorneys. And that was not my vision of the firm or what I wanted. And I think this is natural, you know, so that's why for me too, you know, like without these stand-up meetings, without these various meetings, you know, I'm out doing my own thing. And like, the last thing I'm thinking about doing is, oh, I want to hop on a Zoom call with somebody. So it's important to have these as part of your routine. And the stand-up meetings are again, you don't have to have them just like this. And this would be true even if you had a physical office, but the stand-up meetings, obviously because we're remote, they don't necessarily have to be stand-up, but the idea is like, you don't even sit down for them. You know, you just have the whole firm on, the whole organization on. Obviously, if you're a big company, you need to break it up into your teams, but just a quick, some people do it at the beginning. I've heard of some firms doing it at the end of the day too. We just do it at the beginning. Just a quick way to touch base. Everybody can, you know, see each other. You know, we don't mandate a particular kind of dress code for these meetings. You know, come as you are. But it's important that you have them and you have them daily. And it is important that you stress to people that they need to attend, because because it's virtual, people start to think of them as optional. You know, hey, I've got to go to the grocery store, or I'm out doing this, you know, I'm just not that they're trying to be, you know, not do their thing, but they're out doing their thing. You know, I want to go for a jog or whatever it may be. And you just have to make sure that people understand, no, look, 9 o'clock every morning, of course, if you got a doctor's appointment or something, you can, of course, go to your appointment. You have to move it for the stand-up meeting, but let us know. Again, this would be something, if you had a physical office, that would happen organically. You would see people when they weren't in, or, you know, if you were going to go out for a doctor's appointment, you'd put it on your calendar, or you put it on your door or whatever. In a virtual office, you don't have that. You know, of course, you can have it on a calendar, but you may not have that same sort of obvious communication to people or obvious notification that I'm not in for whatever reason. So this is really key. Have your meetings however you want to have them. Make sure that you have a strategy behind them. I recommend making them short. For example, like we do our Tuesday lunch meetings. That one is a different one where we go around. We talk about our positive focus. This was an idea that I got from a coaching program called Strategic Coach. Look it up on YouTube. Dan Sullivan is the founder of that, and he talks about it a lot. But the idea is to start, have a communication about something that's going right in your life. And it can be personal, it can be professional, and it just changes the tenor of, your interaction with other people, and you're learning things you wouldn't ordinarily learn, particularly in a virtual office where it's all about business. You're on the Zoom call, you're talking about whatever. Yes, there's some chit chat, but there's less of it. This makes room for people to talk about, personal victories that they may have had. And finally, it's not a slide here, but something to consider when you can. It's important to have physical meetings when you can. We try to quarterly have like a bowling night, something that, where people physically come and meet. I know like WordPress, which is a huge company that, is one of the backbones, a lot of websites. Like every year they fly everybody in to one location where they can actually physically meet, and they have a couple of days conference. So that part, if you can swing it, is important too.
Yeah. And then just to talk, this is the last slide here, but it was really just about like virtual work habits. And you kind of already touched on this of just meeting attendance, making sure that even though people are working remotely, that they don't get into that mindset, like you mentioned, of the, oh, I'm an independent contractor, I'm working from home, it's cool, I can kind of do whatever, and as long as I get it done. But just still establishing that this is our work culture, this is what we expect. And that also applies to Slack or to email, whatever you use as an internal communication, saying that, hey, while you're on the clock, we expect you to respond to messages within X amount of time, as well as the meeting attendance. But also another one that you touched on is having that offline time to focus. I know particularly for me, in my position as the office manager, this is so hard for me to do, but I think when I'm able to do it, it's so incredibly productive, because if, say, the project is to write a new procedure on accounts receivable or something like that, if I get that like 2 hours offline where nobody's messaging me, it'll be like done and it'll be perfect and I can submit it or whatever. So you'd be surprised how much you can get done if you just kind of lock down and do it. But then again, there is a balance, because you don't want to just lock down for the full 8 hours and say, this is my project and everyone leave me alone, because of course there's balance, and you want to have your time to work on your projects, but also to communicate, to catch up on your email, to attend these meetings. It's all equally important to running a remote office, I think.
Absolutely. Do you want to just say a word about the print?
Yeah, the Pomodoro method. This one I actually learned about recently from one of Tom's colleagues, Laura Mihalik-Levin, runs Mindful Return, which is a company that does some work with parents who are coming back to work after having kids. And she mentioned this method, which is the 25-minute, working in 25-minute increments. And I think we, just to highlight, this last year, we actually did this for our retreat. And I felt like it was so successful, because whenever we sat down for those 25 minutes, everyone was all ears and everyone was focused and there to work. And then we did a break and everyone was good. And then we came back and we locked down, and it just made our time, I think, so much more productive. So I think that that's a really good system to follow if you're trying to stay productive at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
All right.
we could do a few questions if people are still on. Have any questions?
I have any questions? Otherwise, we will call it a day.
Yeah, I was opening the Q&A and I didn't see any.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for attendees, we'll be sending these slides out to you with the hyperlinks. And if you have people that weren't able to attend, you thought might be interested, you can have them email us. We'll be happy to, this has been recorded. So we'll be able to send out the recording and the slides, which have hyperlinks to them to all the products that we talked about.
All right.
All right. Very good. Thanks everybody for joining. Good luck.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, we might have one. Let's see.
Oh, we have one? Where is it? Ah, I found it. Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Dietrich.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Bye.